Good evening, everyone. I see many of us have survived through the day for this session, so thank you and welcome. My name is Udit Sethi, and I am a director with KPMG, and I have with me Sriram, who leads integration and ecosystem development at Meta. Before that, he was also leading the product and innovation at Verizon and Ericsson. So, welcome, Sriram, and it's a pleasure to have this discussion with you. So, Sriram, my first question on this topic of metaverse would be that what we've all heard is about metaverse to be the future of internet. Metaverse is not one but segregated across a stack of different technologies, networks, experience. So we wanted to take that view from you. And when I say you, how does Meta and you in particular see this metaverse story?
So, good evening, everyone. I'm first and foremost very glad to be here. Growing up in Delhi, and then like about 7, 8 years back, when I was here, I saw that when 4G was already active in US, working very well, India was still on 3G. So that was pretty frustrating back then. But today has been like pretty historic. 5G is getting launched in India. 5G mobility was launched by US carriers about a year and a half or 2 years back. So looking at how India is caught up with the rest of, I guess, North America in terms of the technology is just amazing. So I'm very glad to be here. So I have two tasks right now. One is, given that I'm between you all on dinner, for folks to not leave the room, and then of course get a message across on metaverse. So let me start with the question about like what is metaverse all about, right? So certainly this is titled as Decoding, and of course it's also demystifying metaverse. Metaverse is really, I mean, there's a lot of definitions that's out there, but bottom line is it's an ecosystem play. It needs all the different segments of the industry between devices, applications, infrastructure, cloud players, all coming together to collectively innovate to really make metaverse a reality. And what it is a set of virtual spaces where people can have that immersive experience that can make folks feel like they're together. They're in the same physical space. It's not to replace physical space. It is really to get that experience where you can interact collectively. And definitely with the pandemic, there has been a lot of push towards e-learning and a lot of different newer applications that the entire world has seen as the need. And so if you think about multiple platforms that is enabling that experience, coming together, digitally connected, with a seamless experience for the users across the world. That's really what metaverse is all about. Now, how does it become a reality? Well, there needs to be collective innovation in the entire ecosystem between all the different players that I just talked about.
And that's a great view if we have to sort of segregate meta across different tech stacks. But a natural extension to that would be, how long do you see the time to this reality? And if that time is a little too long, what are some of the milestones, if I have to put it in the short term, mid term, while we see this and envisage this reality and embrace it? So
yeah, so definitely metaverse is a long haul journey. I mean, it's really a pretty much a decade if you think about breaking it down from where we are now. So certainly it's the future of mobile internet, but if we look at how the applications are shaping up, we have enhanced video delivery currently. From that, which really is being viewed as a 2D, there are newer applications that are being developed on mobile devices. That certainly is happening now, but the disruption is going to continue to happen where there's more and more device proliferation that will happen over the next 5 to 10 years. By the time it gets to a mature play on all applications and devices, we're looking at least 2030. The target being about 1 billion users across the globe. by then, who are going to be leveraging the metaverse applications in some way, form, or shape.
And what are some of the use cases you see which will enable this journey? And if I have to say, while you were introducing, you also spoke about something on e-learning. So would we see something which would cut across sectors as the initial use cases which would enable or sort of foster, we'll see more innovation around the use cases in this journey? Or would it be domain specific use cases? How would this journey look like if I have to?
Absolutely. So VR has been around for quite a few years. But then when you look at a multi-point VR and then moving into more like a cloud XR where you can have augmented reality to be supported in a platform, like for example, in the field of global learning or education, AR, like Meta has done investment in Spark AR, which is a platform that can be used to enable education and e-learning across the globe. In fact, that's been also trialed now in India in CBSE, which is that's where I did my schooling in Delhi, and thinking about like how content and learning experience across the globe can reach every single student. That's an amazing experience. Now, if you pivot to healthcare, VR has been used predominantly in areas where like surgeons can practice surgeries using VR, and more so imaging for like any kind of like remote imaging, diagnosis, telemedicine. VR can be used in a much bigger way. And if you look down the road, it's all going to be devices and how the devices shape up. You know, chipsets are going to get more miniature in nature. Devices are also going to be miniature, so that it's not about those huge devices that the users need to carry around. It could be just prescription glasses, or it could be like augmented reality embedded in like Ray-Ban, which is just sunglasses that you can wear for any like outdoor experiences. So if you have a chipset that's already embedded, you've got all the processing happening on your glasses, where you can very much like have that immersive experience without carrying huge devices. That's really what the future looks like. And now this is really a slow journey. It's not going to happen overnight. It is going to take its own time, because device innovation is happening, application innovation is happening. Now let's look at today's world. It's very fragmented. Device players are innovating, application players are innovating, and so are the network providers. But then they all need to come together, right? Midterm is really getting that technology innovation for the ecosystem to be brought together. Long term, creating these platforms that are completely evolved, where all of these co-innovators, content providers, device players can all come together, use a common platform across the globe in order to like push the applications at a large scale and have the experience to be shared across the universe.
And that's a great view, but just to add, I also believe just outside of technology and hardware, while they will all take their own time for the disruption to happen, content would play a very important role, because even while we have the technology today, content is something which we don't have enough for us to experience or embrace that technology. So I want to understand and take your thoughts on how do you see this content getting developed, and a similar effect, the network and the ecosystem expanding for us to make this metaverse a reality. How do you think all of these coming together? How?
Absolutely. So the relationship between content, experience, and devices, they're completely joined at the hip. And the reason I say that is you need your network to be completely programmable. As and when you have applications that will require more compute, you need to have your infrastructure dynamically scale. So the foundational element of this, we've been talking about SDN and virtualization like several years now. But then with 5G, there is a good opportunity for the entire RAN component of the network to be virtualized. Then taking that to the next level, you want to have the network to be completely dynamic. As and when you have applications demanding more compute, you have other applications which may not require the same level of compute. So that auto scaling of the infrastructure is going to be very important. Now, devices, like when you look at devices that are going to be as close as possible to the network edge, those are going to be like several thousands over the next 5 to 6 years. Devices have applications associated with it as well. So network being completely scalable is the foundational element of how this will all be a reality. And that's why I emphasize on ecosystem, jointly innovating, incubating with the different parts of the device and application play that I talked about in order to make this a reality. And that's going to be a gradual process over the next 3 to 5 years. And then you're going to see way more applications and way more devices. And the devices are going to get much more smaller with that scalable compute.
And where do you think you see India leading the race if I have to break this metaverse into these components? How do you see India having their own edge over global?
Yeah, so I believe two verticals where it's going to be very important from India perspective. You are going to have a lot more focus on the global e-learning or educational platform that is needed. And then healthcare. Healthcare is pretty much common across the world, where there has been like a lot of focus on telemedicine and remote diagnosis, where you have tremendous opportunity that India will leverage, especially given the population, given the demand for any urgent medical care. I'm pretty sure that there'll be a lot of VR usage when it comes to treating mental patients. I think VR has got a big role to teach folks about coping skills, especially for the, folks going through depression and et cetera. So these are certain applications, but I do see the rest of the applications are going to be evolving as well from an Indian market standpoint.
And I can continue with my set of questions, but I first want to check with the audience if there is anything on this interesting topic where we want to take views. So maybe, please.
Hi, I'm a Oculus developer, so I'm partly involved in that ecosystem. So as a developer, I have to think of several things, right? Including balancing my budget and stuff like that. So right now, if we develop something for, let's say, Android or Apple, we pay a certain percentage fee, right, to the platform. We see a similar thing with Oculus, which makes sense, right? PlayStation, Xbox, same thing everywhere. But expenses within the metaverse is not just going to be consumption expenses, but also stuff like asset expenses, right? Which you've seen, things like NFT of virtual real estate. How do you as Meta, but also as a larger picture of where do you see this platform tax thing evolving and what's your view on it?
Absolutely. So, if you go back to what's going to be the foundational building blocks, anything related to like NFT or blockchain or SDKs that are being developed, so if you think app development using SDKs is pretty common now. There'll be more and more apps with SDKs that need to be developed. Those building blocks can be leveraged across the entire ecosystem. For the ecosystem to come together and build those building blocks and co-innovate, you do have some offsetting of the costs. And that's going to be the key. If every single player is going to develop a platform by themselves, then you're definitely doubling the costs. You do not want that to go in the opposite direction. So what's important is the SDKs associated with the platform development that is co-shared, co-created across the entire ecosystem.
While I'm sure there would be personal views which would be different, but on a lighter note, tax generally as per the definition is for the greater good. So I hope.
Yeah, hi, I'm working with an enterprise, and hence this question comes very naturally to me. As Meta, okay, and other such similar companies, everyone is talking about creators, platforms, everything, and everything, sounds like B2C. What are we doing in B2B space? What are the possibilities? What is the current, progress like? If you can give something.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in fact, it's good that you did raise that question. So, AR for manufacturing, especially given the amount of like manufacturing related training that all the professionals need to go through, is a very popular use case that is catching up. So, enterprise will definitely catch up here, but the other aspect of it is the application being leveraged across the different verticals is going to be very common on the enterprise. So if healthcare, we can just flip the entire use case to make it more an enterprise related use case where all of the devices related in the hospital are going to be leveraging a common platform and SDKs for connectivity and all application lifecycle management. So enterprise is not going to be far behind. I would think that there will be like applications as AR, which is going to be used, but there's also tremendous potential for cloud XR and VR rendering and et cetera in the enterprise space.
Any more questions? Okay. So while the mic is transferred, anything to do with which are shared use cases or horizontal use cases across industries, L&D, training, health and safety, they would all be enterprise use cases. So there is a very large set of enterprise use cases and a lot of them being prioritized. In fact, if you go out, you will see a lot of these use cases at an enterprise level being showcased at certain kiosks.
Hi, I'm Sheena from Ernst & Young. The question I had on metaverse is, for that immersive experience on metaverse, we are dependent on the Oculus, for example. And today it's not really user-friendly. And we heard the Prime Minister talk about technology being accessible to the masses. So what's the innovation happening to make the device more user-friendly, but also accessible to the masses?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did touch upon it, a little while back. So the way that it's going to evolve is that devices are going to be definitely on the front, like when you have, starting with Oculus, but then it's going to be like more goggles and prescription glasses where all the chipset, the processing is going to be in your glasses, where you don't have to carry like Oculus or any heavy devices around. Now, I do think that there will be a play of Oculus and the next generation devices as we go along. However, ultimately when it reaches the common man, it is going to be like goggles or it's going to be wearables. That is, wearables are going to be like, I don't know, up a notch in 5 to 6 years. I mean, smartwatches are already there, but then think about applications that you can access through your smartwatch or your glasses where it is completely seamless and you do not have to like carry those like devices which have like, I don't know, heavy duty in terms of like processing and using it on a day-to-day basis. So that's where technology is going to go. And again, we're looking at 5+ years before we get there.
In fact, I had the same question. I had the chance to have that offline with Sri, and one very important thing, and all credit to him, he gave me that advice, is that virtual experience is not for an entire day. It's a part of your day. So unless we start looking at virtual experience as a part of our day, we will go through some of these things. So imagine going through a virtual stadium for a part of your day, and that adds another variety to your experience. But real world is here to stay.
Hello sir, I am Shagnik Chakravarti from Bennett University. Currently I am studying on AR/VR and I had a doubt related to metaverse that as you just explained right now, the devices will develop like, let's say we are having a like glass like this and I'm experiencing metaverse like normal. But the thing is metaverse more dependent, more on the VR side or AR side? Because if I'm using glasses like this, I think it will be more on AR side because on VR you will need a covered space so that you can actually like immerse to a totally different world. But in AR, it's like the world is changing to something else.
Yeah, sure. I got your question. So That's really the transition from a 2D to a 3D, right? If in a true metaverse experience, you're absolutely right that it is going to be a multi-point VR. Like that's where you place the cloud VR experience, and then it'll evolve into AR, which is completely three-dimensional, right? So when we say metaverse, we break it down into short-term, mid-term, and long-term. And yes, there are going to be applications. So there's also network characteristics. What kind of performance that you need for these applications? End to end, like you got latency, throughput, differential delay, jitter, all of that factoring in terms of the application experience. Even if it's VR today, you want VR to be at less than 40 millisecond latency and greater than about 80 megabits per second with 5G, right? So ultimately, it is going to get to a 3D space where you have all those network performance experience, like all the metrics, in addition to having it completely as a three-dimensional. So that's really how I see it.
Good evening, sir. My question is not of the technical aspect, but since it is meta, I would like to ask, what is the ethical conscience going behind in developing this platform? Since as a teenager, I use Instagram, which pin company is Meta, and there have been several reports and concerns regarding Instagram, Snapchat, and WhatsApp emotionally and mentally, ill affecting the health of teenagers. So, what is the ethical conscience or sort of policy going behind in developing Meta so that these mistakes are not repeated? If you could shed some light on that.
So I just want to clarify, I'm not Mark Zuckerberg. But so that's going to be like, that's a loaded question. But certainly, I don't feel comfortable going into that. But there's definitely responses that you will see, like that Meta has already announced publicly about that. So yeah.
I'll give something which is completely tangential to this, and this is more of a personal view. I'll not associate it with any organization. See, certain things done in a moderate manner may influence or help you with experience, and beyond that, that may be harmful. If I just take an example of strawberry, happens to be a fruit which we all love, but taken if in an excess quantity can lead to poisoning. So ideally, we some way need to understand, and this is what in many ways the answer is, that in moderation we need to understand how can we leverage another dimension, another experience, to ensure that we get the best of both the worlds. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi sir. Myself from L&T Construction actually. Although digitalization has helped us out in construction industry quite a lot in terms of various application and software like BIM and digital twin like that. What do you think the metaverse will help us out in the future to come in terms of cost optimization and also the efficiency to increase for the projects? How do you think like that?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the last part of the question. Increase what projects?
In terms of increasing efficiency and cost optimization, how the metaverse can help the construction industry in the future to come?
So I think I'm going to go back to one of the points that I made, that the optimization is going to happen with the ecosystem, like collectively innovating and coming up with solution for this together. Like a platform, it's not going to be, end of the day, it's not going to be a single player who's going to be able to develop metaverse and then say, hey, this is like a monopoly and going after the business, individually. That's not the way metaverse is going to work. So cost optimization naturally is going to occur in the sense that it is a shared investment model to begin with. Device players are going to invest, application players are going to invest, platform developers are going to invest, community and open source is going to be like also catching up and developing the SDKs that are needed for the platform. That's really where the optimization will happen.
Just to add to what Sri was saying, if I take a few examples from the construction industry, imagine you have to build a smart city. Typically, for doing a survey, you use a drone. Now, right now, that output is presented on a 2D screen, right? In many ways. Imagine if you could imagine that in a 3D scenario, which is more immersive in nature. So that's one use case where you know what to do, how to do. So your your decisions are faster and they're more precise. That would lead to a lot of cost saving. Another such example would be anything to do with linear asset management, whether oil and gas pipes. We're doing a lot of construction in oil and gas, right? India is signing a lot of contracts with a lot of other countries around that. So anything to do with linear asset management, water pipes, there are tons of use cases. I just gave you two. Third, anything to do with governance. It is so metaverse absolutely will come in and disrupt the industry. And like she said, it is just a while these issues related to hardware and how sticky we can be with the hardware goes away, we would see a lot of disruption in the industry there as well. I hope that answers the question.
To ensure the security aspects of the network as well as the metaverse?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there are several levels of security and privacy that is imposed on different layers of this code development. Applications have like specific security aspects that will be addressed. There's also device-related security and the user-related security, which is not only is there segregation of what applications can be accessed by the users, but also the level of like content that can be accessed is tightly controlled through the platform. And that is at the user level, the device level, and the application level.
Thanks a lot. Okay. I have one question that everyone is talking about metaverse, but metaverse and Web3 as the evolution of internet, it goes hand in hand. And on YouTube or on XYZ platforms, we do see people using these terms interchangeably. So, as per your understanding, okay, what do you think? Like, metaverse, does it need to be Web3 native, inbuilt, right from the decentralized platform, blockchain, and whatever? Or can metaverse exist, or do you think it will exist in both forms? Okay, and the whole Web3 philosophy which is there. Okay,
So the initial hypothesis is really compliant to Web3, but then it's a long journey. It's not something that can be readily answered right now at this point. So it's got to evolve over a period of time.
Absolutely. And like Sri said, that you will see both of them evolve, and it is time will tell which one would take a leap over the other, because in case you want to enable transactions, you may need cryptocurrency on metaverse. And if that's the case, you may have to go with Web 3.0. But if you're doing something for learning, metaverse in isolation as an immersive experience, as a concept of immersive experience, may also work very well. So we will see both the use cases in the near future. Of what would take a leap, only time will tell. Any last questions for Sri? Great. So Sri, thank you so much for your thoughts. Thank you so much for your views. It was absolutely great hearing those, and I'm sure that at least I am going with that learning, and many of us are going with that learning, that metaverse, while we talk about it as one term, is can be divided into a lot of components, including devices, connectivity, platforms. And content, if I have to put it that way. And last but not the least, taxes here to stay. So thank you so much for your time, Sri. A pleasure speaking with you.